Hat making is really just repetitive heat, steam, pressure. And here we're going to start pouncing, which is essentially shaving down the fur so it's even, consistent, and looks like a hat should. So this is all done by feel and touch and practice. The more you've done it, the better the feel is that you get for reducing that fur. And usually we're reducing the fur somewhere in that 15, maybe 20% to get it even and smooth and look finished. And you really don't know what that's going to take until you get in it and start going through the process. My name is Chandler Baird Scott, and I'm the proprietor of Tatton Baird Hatters in Springville, Utah. Traditionally, a hat shop or hat brand has been named by its owner. What I wanted to do was look to the past. We have named ourselves after the first hat maker in Utah. John Charles Tatton was that first hat maker, established himself in the 1860s. And then related back to me, the current steward of the equipment that was used in those original hat shop processes. The goal here is to make a traditional, proper men's and women's styled hats. We're using the tools from the original hat process, the hat shops that were established here in the 1800s. We're trying to live up to that history and do it just like they would have done it then. In our opinion, what makes up a traditional hat shop is having the skills, the ability to go and train, which I did many years ago and worked with my mentor and learned how to make hats, but more importantly, the knowledge to run the tools that we have here in the shop. A proper hat shop has enough blocks, flanges, hand tools, steam machines, and we pride ourselves in our process and our craftsman techniques. So when someone comes to us and they order a hat, we build that specifically for them, from measuring the head to the color and the style and how they'll be using it. Ultimately, our desire is that they will have as much pride in wearing that hat as we enjoyed and had pride in making that hat for them. Traditional hat making, we have to create the break line. The break line's the 90-degree angle between a crown and a brim. So the hat is put in here. This is always about 285 to 300 degrees, somewhere in there. And we set that break line. Fur hat making is all about getting the fur to a specific heat to where it will stay rigid or stay in its shape. The difference between what we do here and what we feel passionate about in hat making is the hands-on approach. We're not punching things out with a pneumatic press. So hand shaping the hat is one of the most important parts. The hand shaping process is unique to each hat, making hats one of the coolest pieces of fashion because they are individual. We're trying or striving to make each hat different. 100 pounds of sand right here. So we use a flange and a flange chassis that slides underneath that sandbagger to then create the shape specific to the style of hat that we're looking for. So we have hundreds and hundreds of flanges. They can vary in between long ovals, standards, different styles of brims, and then more importantly, the brim width. I've always been interested in hats. Found hats to be a very cool thing to try on, to wear. I served a religious 2-year mission in Colombia. I fell in love with hats again then and brought those home. Found a mentor years later, which I then worked for and ran his shop. But the hat making thing has always been a romantic idea of being able to own your own business where you do only what you want to do and you're not servicing the man necessarily, but building pieces of fashion. The idea of wearing a hat is the highest point of fashion, in my opinion. It can be the most personal thing someone is wearing. And traditionally, if we look back 120 years, it was the most expensive thing a gentleman had on his body. His boots, his custom suit, his gun, his 100% beaver custom-made hat was still more expensive than all those things. Tatton Baird Hatters as a brand, where we want to go, the idea of scaling what we have here is very difficult to scale. We can't just replicate what we've done here in multiple locations. And so the idea of growing or where we want to go is really a question that's not answered yet. From a legacy standpoint, we want to stay traditional, and hat making is one of the most specific mentor, master hatter, and apprentice scenarios. So for us to live on the way we are currently, we have to have a next generation or someone wants to pick up and go down the road like we're traditionally doing it. And the idea of doing that is very cool and very interesting.